What is up, guys? Jake from One Hive here with the Town Hall 9 updated base building video. And the guest that I have today might be very familiar to some of you guys. The one that got away, the love of my life, Shadow. What's going on, man?
Yeah, I'm good. I'm uh, glad to be back on the channel.
Yeah, you bet, man. Of course,
I
Shadow is
miss you too.
still a dear friend to all the people at One Hive, and still actually helps us out with base building and stuff like that. So still very fitting for him to come on and talk about this. A real guy that knows a lot about it, and that's not me. I've never got into the base building deep like some of these guys have. So it's always good for me to have another set of eyes when we talk about this stuff. I know the basics, but definitely nowhere near as proficient as Shadow is at it. So Shadow. Get us started on this. I know a lot of the guys have probably already watched the Town Hall 8 base building, and we're going to sort of build on top of that. We're going to talk about some things in duplicates. We're going to go back to some of that, but hopefully it's not going to be just the same thing over, because Town Hall 9 is a different ball game, obviously. So when you sit down, you pull up the screen, you remove all the stuff. What's the first thing you're going to do at Town Hall 9?
Oh, always I put down the clan castle first, right in the middle of the map, just
Yeah,
because it's. I mean, you have to build around its radius. If you give up an easy lure, it it's really inefficient from a base
right.
building
Yeah,
perspective.
the days of dropping a few barbs or anything like that to get the CC lure is pretty much over in any type of even decent wars. I mean, you've got to make them invest something in that clan castle lure if they're going to do it at all.
Yeah, and that's changing a little bit with the post poison update,
Mm-hmm.
where what only really realistically going to be a hound or a dragon in there.
Mm-hmm.
So people, I mean, a hound is still difficult to deal with whatever happens, but there are ways. The trick with the archers and a healer. So
Mm-hmm.
you do still want to protect the castle.
Yeah,
So if you
yeah,
see on this base, as Jake just had the radius selected, you'll see that there's no defense. If you're sending hogs in here, you have to kill at least one defense to be able to trigger the lure, probably two
right. That's when I
from any angle.
way back in the day when I made that video to lure or not to lure. This was back long time ago. That was always what I said, what I call an easy lure. An easy lure is one where you don't even have to kill a defensive building. You want to build a base where that's not an option. I mean, no matter what angle they come from, they got to take something out to get in that radius.
Yeah. So what a lot of attackers will do on a base like this is they'll just not bother luring. You've made it too difficult. You've restricted their options.
Mm-hmm.
That's always one of your key objectives as a base builder. You want to restrict the options of an attacker.
Right.
The more you let them do, the more creative you allow them to be, the more easily they're going to find a way to wreck your base.
Right. Well,
So
and the there's so much that can go wrong in an attack when you don't lure, when you're just trying to kill it in the base. I mean, there's a lot of variables there. When you can lure it to the corner, kill it in a controlled fashion, I mean, pretty much everyone's got that down. But killing a CC in the middle of a fight is a whole different animal than just drawing to the side and taking them out.
yeah, for sure. Especially, I mean, with things like hounds, if the hound pops, all of the pups, they all focus in on your queen. She can go down very quickly, and at the very least, you have to burn her ability.
Right.
So,
Premature use of the ability, yeah, can make a
yeah,
big difference.
yeah. Whereas otherwise, it's that if that hound was off in the corner with just a couple of archers and a healer, it's
Yeah.
irrelevant at that point.
Right. Right.
Just swap the objective for a few troops base, cleanly done.
All right. Well, that's pretty straightforward. Put your CC in the middle. Take away the option of just an easy lure. So what's next?
But yeah, I mean, just place the CC centrally and build out from there. And the
Mm-hmm.
next thing that I tend to look at is the placement of my archer queen,
Mm-hmm.
because the town hall 9, from a defensive and offensive perspective, she is all important. If an attack fails to kill her, that attack is very unlikely to succeed.
Right, whether it be a ground attack or an
Um,
air attack, the queen can absolutely wreck. It doesn't really matter. She's that powerful.
Yeah, precisely. I mean, especially once she gets up to level 25, 30, she will
Hmm.
tear through hogs or balloons. So the traditional wisdom was always to put your archer queen right in the middle, make it as hard as possible to get to her. But
Hmm.
that proved to be something that people were exploiting quite easily. With with a few golems and some high heroes of your own, you can always get to a queen in the core of a base, really pretty easily as well. She'll jump a wall or two, and you can come at her from any angle. So recently, the Town Online meta has shifted to having these offset archer queens, like you can see in the base here.
Hmm.
And the idea is it's possible to come in here and you can kill the queen relatively easily, but she's critically, she's not going to jump these walls here. That's uh, uh, that's pretty important because if you can, the big trade off that you're making here with putting her in the corner is you do not want a suicide barbarian king to be able to kill her.
Right.
And this base is pretty similar to a design that I used in the one hive against TBL and Rising Honor.
Hmm.
And Tito came in with his Barb King on a different iteration of the space and just swapped her for his king. So you need to make her hard enough to get that it's not possible to do that. You need to force them, firstly, to use a jump. If they can just use wall breakers, that's probably not a good thing.
Right. Make them burn a spell on it.
Exactly. Or if they are bringing wall breakers, they need to have a couple of golems there as well. I mean, if you put a golem here and here, then 6 wall breakers to get through there, that might work. But it's a big investment. And so this brings us on to the other reason that you're doing this. When you're putting your queen here and making her easier to get than she could be otherwise, you are limiting the options of the attackers. So if you're coming in, let's think quickly about the 2 main types of attacks you're going to see at Town Online: golems and hogs,
Hmm.
or go lalo with first a golem hybrid and then
Right.
larvae.
Right.
So in your hog attack, the key thing that you're always going to want to take out, in addition to the Arch Queen, is giant bombs, especially double giant bombs. Because if you leave those up, your hogs are going to have a lot of trouble clearing the base.
Right.
Then, in
Let me interject real quickly. Getting back to what you said at first, how it used to be, people always put that queen in the center. Well, what people figured out, they got so good at creating their funnel, pushing into the kill squad. Like you said, if she's in the center, you can come from whatever angle you want to. So you just pick the angle that is going to trigger or at least eliminate a double giant bomb area and come in. When you offset the queen, it doesn't give you that option. It's sort of forcing you, like you said, limiting your options. It's sort of forcing you or the attacker to come in from a certain angle, which might not be where the giant bombs are.
Exactly. So, I mean, on this base, for example, the relatively easy ways you could come in with golems and wall breakers and a jump is sort of from here. You could come into one of these compartments and then to the queen,
Mhm.
or in this way. But if you want to get anything of real value, and the other thing of value for hybrids is often air defenses. If you want to do a lava balloon attack, so
Right.
you see here, you come in this compartment. Yeah, you can get an air defense, or
Mhm.
you can get one from here, but it's really hard to get 2 of them.
And the queen. Yeah,
If you want,
it's impossible to get two and the queen. I mean, you're going to have to bring a
that's the thing.
ginormous thing.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
So if you want to get some of the giant bombs, specifically the double bomb, on your way to the queen, you're going to have to come right across the base like this, or from this angle. And this is also an important thing to remember. Some people just look at where the bombs are and
Mhm.
think you have to trigger the bombs themselves. You don't. If you kill this defense, especially if you kill these 2 as well on
Mhm.
your way past, if your queen snipes those, the hogs, or rather the attacker's hogs, are never going to go there.
Right.
So you need to think in terms of what can be triggered by an attacker and also what can be neutralized.
Great point. If you don't, if you just eliminate, it's sort of like we used to do back in the day with Holo Wee Wee. If you don't have to trigger the bombs. If you take away the defenses around those bombs, it's just as good. The hogs aren't going there.
precisely. Yeah. So with the offset queen, it's a balance. You're a good attacker when they see a base like this and they know they can't get much value coming in from here.
Mm-hmm.
They have two options. One, they can invest the minimum possible in killing the queen. If they can get in there with just a few giants and a king,
Mm-hmm.
then they've got a lot of camp space, a lot of spell space left to just swarm the base with hogs.
Right.
And that's one way that people are finding now to deal with these offset queen bases is just mass hogs. If they do want to go with the more traditional meta 2 or 3 golem attack, they're going to have to come right across the base, from here,
Mm-hmm.
and that means on a base like this, you're going to have to invest 2 jump spells,
Right.
because
Two jump.
and this is important. If you have a base like this and the queen would say here instead, a little bit deeper in, your queen position in this base, it's not where her pad is, it's wherever she can walk to. And if you select the pad, you'll see that radius. She's unlikely to walk right out to here. That's just sort of the range that she'll aggro onto stuff. But she will get pretty far out. And if you have her next to a wall, the section that the queen is in is not just this section, but it's also this section and this section, because she'll jump over it.
Right. Yeah, that's sort of
so when you have this offset,
this queen will not probably ever step past this wall. She'll shoot in because of her range. She'll shoot into this compartment, but she's not going into this middle compartment.
Or even more importantly than that, she might step over here. It's possible. I mean, you see the queen do some pretty weird stuff, but that doesn't matter. It's the thing that's important is that the attacker can't rely on her doing that.
Right.
And if you want to take your chances, roll the dice, so to speak, and hope that the queen just by some chance steps over the wall and your king can kill her, then sure, I'm happy for you to take that chance. Any sensible attacker, though, knows that they have to take a jump spell, otherwise they're taking a huge risk.
Right, because if it doesn't happen, if it doesn't work out, and your king and your golem start beating on that wall, and the queen's sitting back sniping them, your attack's done.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And now the next thing you might want to think about here is also your barbarian king, your other hero.
Yeah.
And once he gets up to a higher level for Town Hall 9, like a level 30 barbarian king, doesn't do the same kind of damage as an archer queen, but he still hits pretty damn hard.
You bet.
So some people like to put the king next to the queen, because that makes it a little harder to come in. You have to invest more in the hero kill. If you're just sending in a suicide king, then if your own barbarian or the defensive barbarian king is there, he might get distracted with that, and it takes a lot longer to get through the BK's health, sort of extra damage.
Mm-hmm.
So you can potentially make the hybrid harder that way. Or if you offset him from the queen, as is done in this base, you essentially force a heal in that area, with a single giant bomb there. As soon as those hogs have taken some damage from the bomb, that king's going to be one-shotting them. So you're forcing a heal at that point. Yeah, unless you can find a way to kill him.
Yeah, as the bomb goes off, the hogs are left with 10% health roughly. That king actually attacks pretty quickly, so if he's taking them out one at a time, he can go through 6 or 8 hogs in just no time.
Oh, for sure, and with the Tesla sitting here as well.
Yeah, with the Tesla.
So yeah, but that's generally where I start when I'm designing a base. I'll put down the clan castle, then I'll think about the hero positioning. What kind of base do I want to make here? Do I want to put my queen really offset or a little bit more centralized?
Right.
Because there's upsides and downsides to both options. If you put her centralized.
That's a good point. There is no perfect base. It doesn't. Every time you make an adjustment, every time you make a change, you might strengthen in one area, you're weakening another area. So there's no perfect base out there.
Absolutely.
Okay, well that's good. King, queen, we sort of talked about that, and you still see them sometimes together, but basically you're saying you probably would never put them right next to each other, right?
No, I think in some bases people do it. Some people like to have the king in there with the queen together. But if someone comes in with, say, witches or
Hmm.
golems, it's easy to kill them together.
Right.
So
Yeah.
on, I don't know, just when designing this base, I figured it was uh, more useful to have them split apart.
Well, we've touched on it quite a
Um,
bit, but talk about specifically giant bombs, because really, giant bomb, one of the most, if not the absolute most common attack right now in three-star clan wars is the hog attack, the goho. So giant bombs are obviously your only hope. If giant bombs didn't exist, hogging, it'd be back to the days of just mass hogging. Everybody would hog every base, it'd be over. So giant bombs are your defense against hogs. Talk to us about how you decide where to place them. Talk to us, if you will, about hog pathing. I know we touched on it at Town Hall 8, but I think it's important enough to talk about again how you want to force the hogs to cross the bombs, how you want them to, and not let them trigger them one at a time. So just sort of go over that for us, if you
yeah,
will.
yeah, exactly. I mean, so when I'm building a base, as I said, I put down the heroes first, and then maybe air defenses. But as soon as that's done, the next thing I look at is the double bombs that I'm going to put down, because where you place those is going to dictate how you can place the rest of your defenses.
Mm-hmm.
Because we'll take for example this double bomb here, that's going to affect everything around it, because you can't have the bomb here and then place the defense here,
Right.
because that's going to affect hog pathing.
Right.
And as you can see on this bomb here, the idea is that from either side, the hogs are going to come through onto this or onto this, and then from this point, the next closest defensive structure, because that's what hogs target, is the one on the other side of the bomb.
Exactly.
Specifically, on the other side of both bombs, in a way that both will be triggered simultaneously as the hogs go past it.
Right. What I've always called it is the short side and the long side. To me, this is the short side. This is what a hog attacker wants to come at from. Because if he can come in from this direction, this is going to trigger. This one's not. He can pre-heal it, and his hogs are going to make it right through. As soon as that defense goes down, they're going to be back to full health. What you want to force it is that there's no logical way. There's no easy way to send your hogs in. Anywhere you send them here, if you send them on this side, like you talked about, they're going to come this direction. And as they get to this, now from here, the whole trap is set. The next closest defense is right across the middle of those bombs. Same thing from this direction. Doesn't matter where you send them from. They're going to work their way around. Once they get here, they're going to come in, and it's going to be the next closest thing right across the middle of the bombs. So it's short side, long side is what the terminology I've always used. And it's not easy. It's not always easy to set it up to where the hog pathing works that way, but it's very important that it does.
Yes, exactly. And so that's the very first stage you want to go through. You need to make sure that bomb paths correctly in the ideal situation where you're controlling the way that the hogs are coming in
Mm-hmm.
with all of the defenses there. The next thing to think of is, how is a skilled attacker going to approach this? Is there a way that they can come in neutralizing? Is there some way that they can take out, say, all of the buildings in this section,
Mm-hmm.
which is going to allow them to send hogs in directly this way, that are
Right.
going to come to this air defense and either trigger the bombs individually, or just some suicide hogs that they can
Mm-hmm.
trigger both bombs and the attacker is happy to give them up.
Right.
So, this is another reason that I like these offset queens, even if they have other weaknesses. It's because they allow you to put double bombs very deep into the base. If
Mm-hmm.
you had the arch queen in here, it's not a good place to put the bomb, because any attacker coming to kill the queen is always going to neutralize those bombs.
Yeah, exactly.
So by having her here, it frees up space in the middle of the base to have this giant bomb. Because if it wasn't here in the middle, it has to go in one of these other apartments, which are closer to the edge of the base. And as soon as you put a double bomb closer to the edge of the base, firstly, it's more difficult to make the pathing work smoothly.
Mm-hmm.
It's just because there are other defenses around, there's a lot more clutter. And the other issue is that it's much, much easier for an attacker to take out, say, a few of these buildings here. And if I had a bomb between these and they come in this way, that's much easier to neutralize than the bombs in the core.
Right. It almost lends
And
itself
with
to just being surgical hogged, and then just by accident they'll trigger it, not even maybe knowing that they're there or going for it. But he just surgical hog sends in 6 or 8 hogs there. Maybe you wipe out those 6 or 8 hogs, but that's that. It's over. Your double giant bomb set's gone.
yeah, precisely. So I mean, you have surgical hogging for more advanced attackers. What's really popular in the meta these days is these queen healer walks.
Mm-hmm.
And if the queen can walk around the base and expose sets of bombs, you can trickle a few hogs into those gaps that she's opened up and forget everything.
Right. Good point. Good
Just
point.
dismantle a base. So
All right.
that's the other reason for putting the bombs deep.
Well, let me ask you this: in this base that you built, you've got 2 singles. Is that sort of what you're leaning towards when you're building a base? Is having a double set and 2 singles? I've always liked the 2 double sets. It just gives you that extra chance of maybe even if they trigger one of them, that later on in the raid the hogs run across, he's out of heals, and boom, messes him up there towards the end. But is that something that you're having more success with? Is having a double set and 2 singles?
Um, I'm gonna sound very non-committal on this, but it's as with everything in base building. There's just pluses and minuses to both.
Right.
So the idea with the singles, and there are some bases you'll see some base designs they're difficult to do correctly. If you mess up a single bomb base, it will get rolled. But if you do it well, it can be difficult because what a single bomb will do is it will force a heal. It's not going to kill the hogs if there's a heal there, especially a pre-heal. There's no chance of the hogs dying, but you force them to use a heal. And if say you have a bomb, as well as the one there in the core, you have one over here.
Mm-hmm.
If they've used a jump spell to get to your king, and then they have to use a heal here, and one here, and one here, and you still got all of the rest of this area of the base, they're out of heals at that point, and it's going to be very difficult to clear it. So that's the idea of single bomb bases, is they force heals, ideally in non-optimal locations where you wouldn't otherwise want to put a heal. You're forced to use one.
Yeah, I remember back in the day, Keo, when he was at One Hive, he liked to build bases like that. And he really tripped some people up because it wasn't something that people are used to. And like you said, if you can control how they use their spells, then you can have a nice chunky section of defenses left when they're out of heals at the base. But now that does require them. To me, it doesn't work as well on cleanup attacks. Defending a second time, because then they can adjust their kill squad, and if they can trigger maybe 2 of those 4, one with a kill squad, one with just a few hogs for sacrifice. Now they've only got a couple left. They might have 3 spells left that they can handle that. But I have seen it trip people up for sure.
Yes, that's very true. I would agree with that. And another thing you can do if you choose to have the singles is still make the base look as if there are other spots where there could be doubles. Have a first attacker who hasn't had a scout, they don't know where anything is. Have them guessing, make them think there's doubles there.
Right, I was going to ask you about that.
When in fact,
yeah, I was going to ask you about that because what I see a lot of times is people have this base and it looks nice, except for there's only like 2 spots where there could be giant bombs. I mean, that's even possible to have a double set. Well, even if I just eliminate one of them, and I'm wrong, and I guess wrong, and there's no bombs there, okay, now I know where they're at, and I can simply really focus on pathing my hogs, or if I have to even stagger them in, whatever I have to do, I know where the bombs are at, and that's almost as valuable as triggering.
That is true, but I would issue a word of caution. I see some people get very, very caught up on making these tricky bases where a lot of open spots with pathing that makes sense. and that's good. It certainly helps to confuse your attacker,
Hmm.
but I would always, every day of the week, first and foremost, choose to make a base that is really as difficult as possible to 3-star, even when the attacker knows where every single trap is.
Good point. Good point. Yep.
Because on a cleanup attack, they may well do, and it's I mean, it also depends on the caliber of attackers you're facing. We were talking about this a
Hmm.
little bit earlier. If you're facing some really top caliber attackers who you know they're gonna clean up your base on the second attack, come what may, once they know where the traps are,
Hmm.
then sure, do something a little bit more tricky. But if this is just a base you're building, war in, war out, you're facing 3-star attackers, but maybe not the best of the best.
Right.
Make that base as hard as possible to 3-star, even when they know where the traps are, and they might have to waste 3 or 4 attacks on it, or
That's a,
even just give up.
yeah, that's a good point. It's better, like you said. This if I'm scouting this base, I pick double bomb set there all day. I don't know it's there, but I'm guessing it's there just because it is the best uh, spot for the hog pathing. It's the most difficult spot to diffuse and take out the queen. So that's where I'm guessing where it's at. But like you said, let's be honest here, a lot of attackers out there that you're going to run into are, even if they're bringing 3-star army compositions and know the basics, they're probably not as proficient as others. They're even knowing where it's at. That's still a difficult thing. How the dilemma here is, how are you going to get the queen taken care of and get that double bomb set triggered before you deploy your hogs? It's not an easy solution for anybody. It's just not.
Yeah, yeah, exactly.
All right. Well, let me look at one more thing, sort of pertaining to this go defense that we're sort of talking about here, and that's the use of Teslas. A lot of times, you can make a base appear like the hog pathing isn't difficult, or I could get in there and I could pre-trigger those or whatever, and boom, a Tesla pops, and you're out of luck. So, how do you use that in your sort of hog defensive mindset?
Yeah, no, I mean not just hogs, really any attack, any defense targeting attack.
Mm-hmm.
Teslas, for me, they add a lot of uh, flexibility in the pathing. When I'm playing around with a base, when I think I have a design that's almost done, but I just need to work on a few things, it's very often the Teslas that I'm moving around at that
Right.
stage,
Yeah.
because they add in little secret variations in the pathing that, I mean, maybe they expect that to be Teslas in certain locations, but you can see on a base like this, there's a lot of open space, and you just really don't know what the Teslas are on a first attack. I mean, you could assume they're not going to be in the core, because that could mess up the bomb pathing. That could pull them in hogs from here
Mm-hmm.
sideways.
Mm-hmm.
But a lot of these other spaces, you're completely guessing.
I'll be honest, when I'm scouting an
Oh, yeah.
attack on a good base for the first time, I don't even try to guess Teslas because 90% of the time I'm wrong. I just don't, I sort of have to try to react to them. I don't know if that's good or bad, but that's the technique that I do. I, a lot of times in my live attack, if it's the first one, I won't even draw them in the base because there's no way to know. Someone that's smart is going to put them in spots you don't expect.
Yeah. I, I usually, I mean, I try and guess. I'm very often wrong, but I think it's, if you've anticipated them in certain areas, it's not the worst thing to be a little bit more prepared when one suddenly pops up.
Yeah.
But
All
no,
right.
it is hard to predict, and that is the way you should be designing your bases as well, with relatively hard to predict a Tesla placement. But
Right.
another key thing to use them for, as well as pathing, is Teslas do a lot of damage,
Absolutely.
and and they shoot them very fast. They'll tear through, obviously, Packers, but any other normal unit as well. And a really important thing with anti-surgical hog-based design, obviously you have bombs, you have spring traps, you have all of that. But if you put all of your point defenses right near the edge of the base, the whole idea of surgical hogs is, rather than the old-fashioned hog deployment where you just drop a big bunch and they work their way around the base. And they have heal spells to keep them alive as they go through everything.
Mhm.
Surgical hogs overwhelms the base because the hogs are hitting every single defense, well, within a certain time frame that it takes, but they attack every defense very quickly.
Right.
Each defense, you have split aggro, so each defense is only shooting the hogs directly beneath it, and then they're all going to go down very quickly. So if the hogs have access to the defenses quickly, they can take them out quickly. That means the ones on the outside of the base towards the edge, those are the ones that are most vulnerable to surgical hogs. But you need to have some point defense inside the base, sort of deeper in the second and third row of defenses, so to speak.
Absolutely. When I did the surgical hog attack, one of the main questions I got was what base is not good for surgical hogs? And while I'm not saying that this base was, if I was attacking this base, at least a section of it, I would try to surgical. But the answer to that question for people is this. This is anti-surgical hog. I mean, it is each compartment. If you'll notice this, you send your 3 hogs in, you send your 3 hogs in, boom, Tesla pops. While they're beating on this, you got a Tesla raining down on them. That is death for hogs because you're not planning on using the heal there. Right here, this goes in, this goes in. You got an X-bow beating on them while they're taking that out. And if you look around the base, it happens a lot. They come in here, get a bomb, boom, a Tesla pops, a spring trap sends them flying. This is how you defend the best you can against surgical hogs, is to have that immediate backup. If these weren't here, if this Tesla wasn't here, okay, think about how easy this would be to surgical this area. Boom, hogs, hogs, hogs. Nothing really hitting them. There's, like you said, they're targeting the one defense, the one set of hogs that's right underneath their feet. There's nothing backing them up. Having that immediate row of backup is the best way to try to slow down surgical hogs.
I think this is perhaps a good moment to make another quite general theoretical point about overall base design and how you should approach it when you're trying to hog a base, and equally, therefore, when you're trying to design a base to defend against hogs. With surgical hogs, the best bases for surgical hogs are more spread out. If you have a base that is this big, packed full of all of the defenses, if you try and surgical hog that, everything is there, and all of the defenses are going to be able to shoot your hogs at the same time. And the only way you can deal with a base like that is by having the spells to
right.
And so that, if you pack everything together, what you're giving your attacker is very, very high value spells.
Mm-hmm.
And say, just think of how either hogs under heal will just tear through everything, or even more so, balloons under rage.
Mm-hmm.
And especially when you'll notice in this base, all of the buildings are, with the exception of, say, a few Teslas, none of them are completely adjacent to one another. And that's because balloons do splash damage.
Right.
And if you put your buildings right next to each other, balloons can sometimes take out 2 at a time if they come in from the right angle.
Yeah, absolutely.
So what you want to do is, and this is perhaps quite a high level point, but generally speaking, think about where spells are going to be used in the base, and don't give up too much value. Don't if you put down a point, say here in the base, I mean, you're hoping they're going to use a heal spell here for hogs. They're either, if they send in, say, they can get 3 hogs on here, 3 on here, and 3 on here, then they can take out those defenses. They don't necessarily need a heal, but then the Barb King's there's the bomb, there's the Tesla, and they're going to lose 9 hogs. 9 hogs for 3 defenses is not a great trade, to be honest. So you need to look at this in terms of efficiency. Always look at what it's going to cost to take out a certain area of the base or achieve a certain objective. And you want to make each of those objectives as expensive as possible.
Right.
Attacker.
It's an investment versus return thing, and that's what we've always talked about in attacks. When we sit down on Skitch or Twiddler, we're always talking about, well, that's not worth that investment. That's not worth what you're bringing to take out that section of the base. And as a defender, you want to make as many of those situations as possible. This is just not worth it.
Yep.
It's like you said, it's not worth 9 hogs and a heal to take out that top area there. It's just not.
So the more you clump up a base, the closer everything is together, the higher value spells you're going to give the attacker. But equally, the more you spread everything out, the fewer defenses are in range of one another, and therefore the easier it is to surgical hog a base. Because if you're coming in here to this arch tower, and you only have, say, one arch tower here, if this Tesla wasn't here, and not the Expo, then probably even with the Expo there as well. But if you're coming in here, your hogs, there's only really one other point defense shooting them at that point. So, because if everything is super spread out around the base, there's less focused fire at any given point.
Right.
So it's, as always, it's about finding a balance. Don't clump things up too much, because otherwise they get really high value spells. But don't spread everything out too much, because otherwise you don't have enough focused DPS at any point.
They can get too much without those spells, basically.
Exactly, yeah. And it's just the most obvious thing during surgical hog attacks, because that's specifically exploiting that idea. But it's equally true in any other attack. I mean, even a go wipe. If you have a really, really spread out base, go wipe can often do very well against it, just because there's not enough focused fire to kill all of those golems. And they're just going to sit out in front tanking, maybe get healed up by a heal spell.
Right, absolutely. All right, well, that's a good transition point, I think. We've sort of talked about the bombs and the hog defense. The next most important thing, and maybe you would even place it above the bomb location, is the air defense location. I mean, obviously, that's your main defense against the golem, the other attack that you're going to run into as a Town Hall 9. So talk to us about that, how you decide to place those in relation to everything else that we've already talked about.
Yeah, I don't know that I would place it above bombs in terms of importance. I think they're equally important. Just you have to have both in mind. I tend to place the air defenses roughly, actually, before I put down bombs. I just a personal preference, really, because for me, where you put the air defenses, you build everything else around that.
Right. You got to
because firstly, yeah, and the way I see Town Hall 9 personally as an attacker, if you have all of the trap locations, if you know where everything is, you can often do very well with air. But if you don't have the trap locations, if it's first attacks or your scout hasn't revealed everything, hogs are often the stronger option. So I feel like a lot of the time I build bases with hogs as being number one priority. And with the air defenses, you just have to make sure it's good enough. If your base is good enough that it's tricky to hit with air, that's likely you're likely going to be hit with hogs most of the time as a Town Hall 9.
Right. Yeah.
So with air defenses, the very first thing that I always think about is placing them in relation to the Archer Queen. You never want to make it possible for them to come in with 2 golems and take 2 air defenses and a queen.
Yeah, we've seen that so many times.
That's kind of the number one thing in it.
Yeah, if they get 2 ADs, the queen and the CC, you're done. I mean, you're done at Town Hall 9. They're going to follow in the back end, and it's going to be over. So you've got to, almost at all costs, just not let that happen.
Yeah. And then, I mean, this is difficult to get the balance right, but you, ideally, if you have air defenses covering each other, like these 2 here very clearly cover each other, as do these 2. And what that means is that whenever, say, a lava hound comes in range of these air defenses, yeah, they're going to tank the air defenses. And that's what the attacker wants. That's what the hounds are there for. But air defenses do a lot of damage, and they are eventually going to burn through that hound. And if there's 2 of them there, the rotational deployment that attackers do around the base, they come in with 2 hounds here. There's a reason they're only doing 1 air defense at a time. If they try and come in at everything all at once, then you've got all of those air defenses shooting everything all at once, and the base is operating at maximum efficiency. The damage output is as high as it can be. So you, ideally, as an attacker, you want to take out small sections of the base at a time, generally speaking, obviously there are exceptions.
Right.
But so if you can have air defenses covering each other, that's going to kill hounds a lot quicker.
Right.
That's
The way
that's
I've
obviously
always
something
looked,
you
the
want
way
to
I've
do.
always looked at air attacks and air defense of air attacks is the defender wants. I mean, everybody, the defender and the attacker wants the lava hound to pop or to pop into pups. The difference is the defender wants it to happen a lot faster than the attacker does. So that's sort of the goal in my mind, or it always has been on a defensive base, is to I want to make those lava hounds bust before they're ready for them to. And they want it to be
Yeah,
sort of right towards the end, just as the balloons are closing in on the air defense. Boom, it goes pop. They get the pups for cleanup. The balloons take out the air defense and they win. If you can make it like, oh crap, my hound's already gone. Now everything surrounding that is targeting my balloons. That's when you've got the advantage as a defender.
yeah, and I mean, it's difficult to put this in a one-liner because it's really a culmination of things
Mm-hmm.
that you want to do to achieve that effect. So obviously, the placement of the air defenses is the very first thing. You mustn't forget that. Yeah, you see a lot of these bases with offset air defenses from the queen, and that's good. You're limiting the options of the attacker again, but don't forget to have your air defenses covering base. If you put them all over here, firstly you're opening yourself up to go low, even where they
Yeah.
just come in and take out the air defenses, then back end loons for the rest.
Mm-hmm.
But also, even regular sort of holo type attacks. It's you need to remember to get as much coverage as possible.
Yeah, we've seen it too many times where they clump them up on one side. That just doesn't work. You know, if an air defense was here, these two weren't. It's too easy. You come in with Valks or, like you said, just a go wee wee or whatever. The air defenses go down. Now this whole, I mean, you can bring 20 loons. You can wreck that entire bottom of the base. It just doesn't work.
Yeah. Oh, one other thing as well that's changed recently with the new mechanics, the jump spell, and also the earthquake spell. Want to make sure that it's not possible to open up with an earthquake spell specifically, which is pretty big. If they can drop one earthquake spell and through that have access to all of the air defenses,
Yeah.
that's a problem because they can come in. They're using 4 earthquake spells, sure, but that's 2 regular spells, which leaves them with 2 more and a poison.
Right.
So
Yeah.
that gives them, let's say, a heal and a rage plus the poison for the CC or the skeletons. And if they can get those air defenses with a heal and a rage, looting the rest of the base will be quite easy.
Yeah, that's the thing that people have to remember is that balloons don't need spells. I mean, a rage is nice for balloons, but when you're talking about taking out these outlying defenses, 2 balloons gets any of these, you know, pretty much. And we're not into the red traps yet, but taking those out of the equation, if they take out all your air defenses, they can just surround the base, and the balloons are going to do their job. So they don't need a spell to do their job. They have that much damage output.
Yeah. One tip for people, by the way, actually, is a slight side note, and I suppose it's in some ways relevant to base design too. But if you're going to drop balloons, say on here and here, you've got the Arch Tower, the Wizard Tower, and the Expo.
Mm-hmm.
Much more efficient to just drop one giant first, because it's like surgical hogging.
Yeah.
You have all of those defenses shooting the giant, and this is especially true with Wizard Towers with balloons, stuff like that. That's much more efficient, and you don't need as many balloons.
Yep, I remember Rex saying that way back on one of the videos. I can't remember which one it was, but that's a good point.
So then the next thing that you're gonna need to focus on with preventing air attacks, and when we talk about air attacks, we almost exclusively mean lava loon. Dragons just don't really work at Temple 9,
Right.
except against bad bases.
Right.
So the next thing is going to be these seeking air mines, the black bombs.
Yep.
If you put 2 of those together.
Yeah, I was just gonna say what. So I guess before we get into that, before you know where you're going to place those. I mean, we always want them near an air defense because that's where the lava hounds are going. And again, your goal as a defender is to make that bust before the attacker is ready. I guess you've sort of got to think about what is the most likely air defense that they're going to at least try to take out with their kill squad. Because if you put your black bombs near those defenses and they succeed with that, taking out that air defense, you've basically wasted your air defense, your bombs.
Yes, and they're huge. People people should realize obviously that with the black bombs you want those to hit the hounds. With the red bombs you want those to hit the balloons. So that's in placing those, that's always going to be your primary concern. Where can I have the black bombs hit the hounds, and where can I put the red bombs so they're not necessarily going to be triggered by the hounds. Hopefully the path that the hounds take will not be via all of these red bombs.
Right. Yeah, good point.
Because the hounds will soak those up beautifully. But the black ones, 2 of those will take out a level 2 hound down to really very low health, and it will be the air defenses will be able to finish it off in quick order. So generally, yeah, you want you can put singles, you can put 1 on each air defense, but the way I like to do it is just put two of these black ones on 2 air defenses, and usually, yeah, you can try and surprise them, but usually put them on the 2 air defenses furthest away from the queen.
Right.
Because those are the ones where the hounds are most likely to be coming from.
Yeah.
I mean, you'll have 1 hound come in here, and immediately 2 bombs gone. Next hound comes in, it will survive for a bit. And a good attacker will let this hound come through to here before the 3rd hound comes in. If that 3rd hound comes in too quickly, that's a brand new hound with full HP, and he's going to take 2 of these bombs, and he's gone.
Excellent point. If they deploy this hound too quickly, then basically the easiest way to say it is if this very weakened hound that comes in, it's been taking fire for 30 seconds, maybe not quite that long, makes its way across, and it absorbs with 10%, 15% health. It absorbs these bombs much more beneficial for the attacker than if this brand new one comes in and all of a sudden it's at 20% health and this air defense takes it out as well. So excellent point there.
Yeah. So I mean that's another argument for why you might perhaps want to have 1 here and 1 here as well, and just have a single black bomb for each air defense, because that way you're much less likely to have a really inefficient use of them, where a single hound can on low HP can pick up both.
Right. Well, okay.
But
so I think,
again, it's just another choice to make.
Yeah, it's like you said, everything's got to give and take. Everything that you do, that you change, might strengthen one attack or one defense of an attack, but it's going to weaken something else. So it's just something that you got to weigh out and find out what works for you.
Yeah. And then moving on from there, the last thing with air defense is your sweeper placement.
Yep.
That's obviously a relatively new development, but we now have 2 of these, and you can do some interesting things, and you can make air attacks a lot more difficult than they used to be. So what you can see I've done on this base is you have the 2 covering one another. So there's really no angle you can come in from here where you don't have sweeper to contend with. And they're quite deep in the base, so it's not like you can take one of them out quickly. You're not going to have balloons coming in directly at this thing. They've got to get through, firstly, the radius of the other sweeper and all of these other defenses that they're going to have to kill on their way in, and they're constantly being pushed back from. So your other option is you could have, say, 2 of them in the core pointing out like this. And that's going to cover a lot of the base as well.
Right. I like what you did, though. I like the covering each other because, as you said, the conventional wisdom is once you sort of get your thing, you should sort of attack. You start your lava balloon attack from the backside of that air sweeper. But here there is no backside because the other one's facing directly at it, and it's going to push it back. I personally think that air sweepers at Town Hall 9 are not that big a deal. I have seen it on very rare occasions foil an attack, but a well-executed golems, most of the time, it doesn't really play a factor, in my opinion.
Oh, yeah. It's just, I mean, attacking in general is so strong at Town Hall 9 that if you get your attack right, you can overwhelm bases with a lot of troops to spare. Right. I mean, you see people pulling out 3 stars in 2 minutes, less than 2 minutes a lot of
Yeah,
the time.
I've seen a few
And that's just because
minute and
they've
a
torn
half.
through
Yeah,
bases.
yeah, it's pretty
Yeah,
crazy.
exactly.
But basically,
And
what you're
not even
saying,
on bad bases some of the time.
yeah, yeah. I've seen some gohos and even some go loons that it happens, and it's like, how did that happen so quickly? It was just over. I mean, just instantly, it was over. But it was very very good
Yeah.
attacks. But on the air
Mm.
sweeper, how do you? I mean, basically, what you're saying is don't let them be targeted too early. Don't let loons get to them. Sort of protect them a little bit, and then just force, cover you can cover each other, or just cover a large area at the base. Make sure that you're pushing things around in a big area, not just one little
Yeah.
section. And the closer you bring it out to the edge, like say if this air sweeper was here and you had it pointed this way, you're really covering a much smaller area. Having it in the core, it widens that V out. You're covering a larger area.
Yes. Yes, precisely.
Okay.
The I mean, the air sweeper, as you say, it's not a deal breaker on air attacks. It's not going to stop a good air attack, but it is annoying, and that's as far as I'm
Very
concerned, the
true.
best thing you can do with them. Make them as annoying as possible. Add variance to the attack.
Yeah.
Add the possibility that it just keeps pushing those balloons off a little bit longer, and that air defense survives a little bit longer because the sweeper is just constantly pushing the balloons back a little bit further, and it's taking it 3 seconds more to die. And in that time, it's killed a hound, which was tanking otherwise.
Yeah,
And then it starts killing balloons.
I think that it can play a role in that butterfly effect that we've talked about so much. One minor thing, that air defense getting off one more shot could change the outcome of the raid. I'm not saying it always will, but it could, and the air sweeper can definitely play a role in
Yeah, yeah. And the next thing when you're placing them is just think about always when you're designing a base, think from the perspective of an attacker. Think how an attacker is going to hit this.
that.
What path that their hound's going to be taking in. In a normal rotational deployment, they're either going to be coming around this way or vice versa. So that means probably say they've taken out one air defense. They're coming in with hounds this way. The balloons are following. So that means you need if you can put a sweeper. Sorry, I'll just change color here, make it a little bit clearer. If you have a sweeper that's disrupting that deployment, that's an annoying sweeper. Equally, if you look from the opposite direction, say they've first taken out this air defense, and then they're coming in this way, then to have this other sweeper getting in the way there, that's stopping the initial deployment. So what can they do? It's a pretty wide radius. They could maybe start from a little bit further around, and if they come in here, and then they can come in the back of the sweeper. But then they're having to contend with this one already.
Right.
So there's really no way to get around that.
Yeah, just make it as annoying as you possibly can. That's basically what you're saying.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Well, that's good. The only thing that we've got left, really, as far as air attacks that I would say we need to talk about is those red air traps. The ones that you said that obviously our goal here is to get them on balloons. So how do you sort of decide where you place that?
Well, I would say also actually there's one other thing that we haven't spoken about with regards to defenses for air attacks, and those are wizard towers.
Oh, good point. Good point.
And those kind of tie in with the air bombs because they're splash damage, and splash damage is not going to do much to the lava hounds. It's exactly what you want the lava hounds to be hit with. It's low gross damage, and that's just one tanky unit. However, if you have, say, 3 balloons or a pack, if the balloons are grouped up, especially as they do near the end of an attack, and you have 6 of them there, if they come in range of a red air bomb and a wizard tower together, that can take out a full pack very quickly.
Yeah.
If they're stuck on something else, they can be down well before they get anywhere near the wizard tower.
Well, and how does...
the goal of it?
Go ahead.
I was going to say just that the goal of an attacker is always going to be to pick up the air bombs on their way into the air defenses with their lava hounds. So a good hound deployment on this base, you'd see one maybe coming in like this, and like this.
Mm-hmm.
Those would be a good paths for the hounds to take in. So, I mean, you might think that those bomb placements, they're therefore not ideal, and perhaps it's true, but that's why I also have some down here,
Right.
because this is an unlikely path for the hounds to take. And if they come in with, say, they've just come in from here, they've taken one air defense and a sweeper from here, they may not have taken out these archer towers down here. So they're going to rely on their balloons to do that near the end. And that's comes sort of all the way across here. It's a pretty unlikely path for a hound to take.
Right.
It's a good attacker might do it, but there's really no position on the base where you can put the air bombs where they're going to be useful, where they can't be maybe triggered by a hound.
Yeah, again, it's anything you do to strengthen one area can possibly weaken another. One question I wanted to ask you, though, we all know that the wizard towers, when balloons can get bunched up towards the end of a golem balloon attack, it's really nice to have a wizard tower left, because that can actually wreck a attack, because if the balloons don't make it, lava pups almost can't. They're going to get bunched up as well, just a shot or two from the wizard tower. So is there anything that when you're placing them, I notice that these are all pretty much exposed. You could target them directly with balloons. Do you ever try to make that not a possibility, to where the balloons are going to go somewhere else first?
Yeah. So in some bases I've done, in other bases way back, I was playing around for a while with more exposed air defenses. So air defenses out like this, where also very, very difficult to get two at the same time as the queen, because they're pretty spread out.
Right.
And then you have just a big clump of wizard towers in the middle, like 3 or 4 of them in there. So when balloons come over the middle, if you don't have a heal spell there for them, and that's not standard for a lava balloon attack, but if you have a bunch of balloons coming through here and you have 4 wizard towers shooting them, maybe you have some red air traps in there as well, they're going to get smashed pretty quickly.
Right. Yeah.
But regardless of whether you have them more on the outside, like in this base, or if you clump them on the inside, the strongest use of your wizard towers against air attacks is putting them in places where they're not in range of the air defenses.
Yep.
Because what happens where the air defenses are, that's where the lava hounds are going to sit. If you have lava hounds sitting here tanking, if they're in range of the wizard towers, then the wizard towers, this one here, see, that is in range. There's just
the one.
There's nothing. Yeah, you can't always do this. It's not the end of the world if it just doesn't fit into your base. Sometimes it doesn't, but it's another problem to deal with.
I was just about to say,
go
ahead, and if you haven't ever thought about that, try to build a base to where no wizard towers are in range of air defenses. It's not as easy as it sounds, but it is a good practice. The reason that is because your best defense against balloons is the wizard tower. It hits them all at the same time. If a lava hound comes in this direction and he plants up on this air defense, any balloons that are sent in, even if they're sent in directly, the wizard tower is not targeting the lava hound. It's targeting the balloons. Conversely, if you have an archer tower, almost impossible. Their range is too big. Anywhere you put, air defenses, lava hounds, that archer tower is going to be targeting that lava hound the entire time. This expo is going to be targeting that lava hound the entire time. The wizard towers are the ones that can do it. Yes, as you circle down there, these
even those two, which are, I mean, they might just be out of range, but it's pretty close still. Yeah. But with the wizard towers also, if they're coming in from this angle with their hounds, this wizard tower is dead quickly. I mean, the balloons could probably, it's going to take a shot, maybe 2 shots at the hound as the hound goes past, and the loons are going to take it out very quickly. But the idea with the wizard towers here is it's the rotational deployment.
Yeah.
So there's hopefully always going to be a wizard tower 2 left on the end. Because when they get to the end, unless they've been very efficient and they've held a lot of balloons back, you often have the hounds are burst by this point. Say they come around this way. The hounds are all gone, and you have a big clump of balloons moving through here. They take out the last air defense, but then they still have a wizard tower, and they have one here as well.
Yeah, and they've got to stop on these defenses. They got to stop and take that out. They got to stop and take this one out. Oops, sorry about that. and that's going to make it to where the wizard tower can just sit back, hit them, and they're all clumped together, so it's doing damage to all of those balloons at once. And if they're damaged from possibly coming through, picking up a small red bomb or something like that, it can potentially ruin the raid.
Yeah. So yeah, I mean that's the idea generally in defending against their attacks, with how you want to place the defenses where they can most effectively shoot the things you want them to shoot. The other thing that you need to do is you need to think about the pathing of balloons. I mean, a lot of people are aware of hog pathing, especially in relation to bombs, but balloon pathing is also very important when you're designing bases. Because where do they want their balloons to go to? They want them to go to the air defenses as quickly as possible, generally speaking. Those are the high priority things to take out. So if you have an air defense, say, let's say you have this wizard tower here, and then you have an air defense here instead of the expo, they can pretty quickly send balloons straight in here. So that's it's going to be quick to take out, and that's one of the problems with all of the wizard towers in the core, and then having the spread air defenses, like I was talking about before. In that design, you give them easier access to the air defenses, and they can take them out quicker. So, as always, it's a trade-off.
You want to try to force those balloons to have as many stops as they possibly can before they get to the air defenses, because it goes back to, again, you want that lava hound to bust before the air defense, the balloons make it to the air defense. That way, all your pups get killed. They don't have cleanup troops. It's just a ripple effect through the raid.
And so to do that, it's not just a question of having a lot of buildings in the way, a lot of things for them to get through, because if you do that, you're just going to push all of your air defenses into the core. So the thing you need to think about is the way that from each external structure, how balloons are going to path into the base from there. So you see from here, if you have balloons coming in onto this arch tower, they'll come from there onto the cannon. And from here, they may actually come up to here onto the Tesla instead of onto the air defense. And then that way and this is where I like Teslas on the pathing, as I was saying before. You give balloons extra ways to sort of be pulled off course a little bit. And attackers hadn't necessarily anticipated.
Exactly, yeah. If you,
and they can sort
like
of
you said,
this
is a perfect example right here. If I'm a balloon attacker, I'm thinking, okay, I send some balloons in here, 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 and these balloons are going straight in. Wait a minute. These balloons go here. Maybe then they trail off, or even if they have to make one extra stop, that might have that butterfly effect of now the lava hound pops before the balloons get there. It gets 2 or 3 shots at lava pups. It just on and on and on. You can talk about it all day, but basically you want to delay it as well as you can, as efficiently as you can.
So I mean, here a single Tesla isn't going to make a massive difference, especially if there's a raid spell there. It gives maybe a second more. And this is something that you'll see very good air attackers do. As they're attacking, for example, with the hybrid, you'll take out a certain section of the base, for example this, and that fixes the pathing. It is a lot of Town Hall 10 attacks. It's a huge issue where you're taking out chunks of the base to correct the pathing of balloons, to stop them going into certain areas and to make them funnel as you want them. So you do that as a separate action, but then really good air attackers in real time as they do their attack, will be cutting off certain areas of pathing. So with the balloons coming in here, they'll not only have balloons coming in here, but they'll also have them coming to the mortar. So by the time that the arch tower here goes down, the mortar is also gone. So everything comes into here, then it will come to here.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. That's what we talked about in clockwise, counterclockwise. That's why you do that. You don't want your balloons to start coming in and then just start working. Oh, Tesla pop. Now the balloons are working their way across the base. As you send these in, you're also sending these in. This eliminates that. Now, even if they have to run up here and grab this Tesla, which you didn't expect, the next stop is the air defense.
Yeah. So how can you stop that as a base designer? The answer is you can't. I'm afraid to say it's just that simple. You can't stop a good attacker doing that, but at least you can force an attacker to be good. You can
That's right.
force them to do
That's a
that.
good point. Yeah, it's the best way to
And
say it. You can at least make them bring a good attack to beat you.
yeah, so so yeah, as I said, you hit a brick wall at that point where there are simply ways to fix pathing, and you can never get it perfect. But
All
you
right.
can
Well,
do your best to be
I
as
think
annoying as possible.
that's the best way to say it. I think that's a good point. But in the sake of time, let's move forward. We've talked about pretty much all the things you can do to defend against a golem. Let's talk about just the few traps that are left, and I think we've pretty much covered everything at that point. Well, there's a couple more things actually, but let's move on so we can keep the time as short as possible. Let's talk about spring traps. Let's talk about skeleton traps, and let's talk about small bombs. However, whatever order you sort of prioritize them, walk us through how you sort of decide where to put those.
In terms of prioritizing, the spring traps are absolutely critical. They're often your biggest defense against hogs, because bombs are going to be taken out by a good attacker will be neutralizing your bombs with the hybrid, or they'll be surgicling around them. And that's especially reasonably good attackers. That's what they always focus on. They'll get the bombs. Really good attackers will think about spring traps as well. But a lot of the time when you're designing bases, people they look at how to neutralize the bombs and get to the queen. And then the spring traps, they don't have a plan for them. They just assume they'll be able to hog the base at that point. And if you've used your spring traps very effectively, you can still absolutely decimate a hog raid. You can cause them real trouble. And I think it's happened to all of us, really. You think you've done an attack well, and you suddenly fail, and you go back, and you're just like, how did I fail that attack?
Yep.
And it turns out you lost 15 hogs to spring traps.
Well, and I think it took a while, and I think maybe it's just now happening, that base designers caught up with spring trap placement for surgical. Because when surgical came out, it was the hogs path in such a different way than we were all used to. Hogs always were in groups. They always ran, from defense to defense on the side. Well, now when let's say this is an example, let's use a good example right here. If you put your spring traps right here, okay, spring trap, and I send my 3 hogs, 3 hogs, 3 hogs, there's a reasonable chance that those spring traps won't get any hogs. This one might go down a little earlier, and these hogs step over, but these two could die at the exact same time. These hogs all move forward, and those spring traps did nothing. That was an adjustment that had to be made, because we were so used to it. It was the way things were for so long. You made the old school quote hog ring, and that was your defense against hogs as far as spring traps. That no longer works.
Yeah. And another thing that makes it a little bit easier even is that say you have hogs come in here and here and here. You don't have to have the timing absolutely perfect for the hogs not to run laterally between the defenses, because hogs actually pause for a moment once the defense goes down. They sort of stop, they retarget, and then they'll move on.
Yep.
So the way we tend to use spring traps is don't put them outside the base. You could maybe throw up a wall breaker, or you could catch some hogs coming in, but as soon as there's a cleanup attack, they'll probably know where it is, and they can trigger it very cheaply. Even if that means just 1 hog, they sacrifice 1 hog.
Right.
That means 2 hogs aren't going flying, which could be.
Yep.
And once you add that up with 4 or 6 spring traps, two hogs on each of those, that's some 8, 10, 12 hogs that are going to be active in the raid that wouldn't have been otherwise.
Yeah.
So generally, you want to put them at least 1 layer in. Also try and put them in places where the hybrid isn't going to come from. Yep. And when I say the hybrid, I mean the golem part of the attack with the golem and the heroes. And then also spread them around the base for the same reason. Because if you have 6 spring traps in here, as a cleanup attacker, if I know that, I'm going to make a lot of effort to come in and neutralize those. So if I can come in this way, then that's as important as neutralizing a double bomb, in my opinion, as an attacker.
Yeah, absolutely.
So spread them around the base. Make sure that from no one angle they can neutralize too many of them.
Well, and the obvious thing that maybe we're overlooking is put them between defenses. Put them where hogs are going to go.
Yes, and yeah, that's absolutely the next step. So you need to think very, very carefully with spring traps, even more so than with bombs, because with bombs the pathing is quite obvious, and there's a radius for the bomb, which is pretty big.
Right.
So if the hogs sort of run through here, or through here, there's anywhere in there, they're going to trigger both of the bombs, no problem.
Right.
Whereas with a spring trap, if the hogs run here or they run here, they've completely avoided it. So,
well, and I've seen people place them.
You need to get it perfect.
Yeah, I've seen people place them, like say perhaps right here. Well, if hogs, that's fine if the hogs come across here and stop. But if they come from this direction and they go here, this did nothing for you. So you want them to be in an area, in a spot like this right here. I mean, the hogs are going to go there. I don't care what the situation is, where they're coming from. If they come from this side, they're still going there. It doesn't matter which direction they come from. So make sure that they are actually between two defenses, not just off on the edge of a defense and hoping that the hogs stop in that direction. Sorry.
Yeah, so I think that's most of what I wanted to say about spring traps. Really,
let's talk about
they're mainly going to be effective against hogs. That's what you should have in mind.
Yeah, that's what you're defending against. Who cares if a spring trap throws a wizard in the air? Not a big deal. You want to try to get 3 hogs on that spring trap. This should be your goal.
Yeah. So I suppose next we can talk about the skeleton traps.
Okay.
When they first came out, people liked putting them in with the heroes because when you come in with the hybrid, with your attacking heroes, if suddenly 6 skeletons pop up, then the attacking archer queen, for example, she could be distracted for 5 or 6 seconds while she's shooting all of them.
Right.
But then the meta shifted. Especially people, started using witches a lot in these big golem attacks with some witches as well. So those started taking them out. But then poison came along.
Right. Poison's the big one. Yeah.
That's really changed the game on those. So if people come in with the poison spell, they're just going to kill all of your skeletons immediately. So you should don't bunch them in here with the arch queen, because they'll as they lure the clan castle and they get the queen, they're going to take everything together.
Yeah.
On this base, you can see the ideal situation with ground skeletons is that the attacker has used their poison already, and there are hogs coming around here, and the skeletons harassing them.
Right.
Because as soon as those hogs get low, the skeletons are just going to be beating away on them. And if the attackers run out of heals at that point, very often a big group of skeletons on his hogs will finish the raid.
Right. I was going to say that goes back to controlling where they use their spells. If you can make them sort of already have used their poison spell, and you have ran them out of heal spells, that's when your skeletons can be effective. I've said it a million times. Hogs under heal, they don't even know skeletons are there. But when you don't have a heal, it can really turn the table.
I think this might actually be a slightly older base design that was from pre-poison times.
Yeah.
So you can see here the skeleton traps, they're quite close together. And that's actually maybe something I'd avoid, because a good attacker, maybe, especially if you have a dragon and some loons in your clan castle, then they're probably just going to save their poison and wait for the skeletons to come up. If you have a hound in the clan castle, then yeah, maybe they'll use it to kill the pups. But otherwise, if they've been saving their poison for your skeleton traps, if hogs come in here and trigger both, then they're going to drop the poison and kill both. But
right.
As soon as if they're going to drop the poison as soon as they see skeletons, ideally you want that to be where they've only triggered one skeleton trap.
One of them, yeah, exactly. Yeah, I got you.
Yeah. So if you split them up a little bit, but don't make them triggerable from the outside. Don't have one, say, here, because the cleanup attacker will drop or may drop one hog there.
or a wall
Yeah.
breaker even might
So
run in there and just grab them, because if they get in range, that's all you got to do is grab it, get in range. They're all going to come out and they can kill it with the kill squad, and that's not what you want. So for sure.
yeah, precisely. And on the subject of wall breakers, very nice segue here. That's what you can use your small bombs for. And
Yep.
I think you talked about this in the Town Hall 8
We
video
did.
that you did, Jake. These small bombs, and this is actually much more pertinent at Town Hall 9. If you use a couple of them at Town Hall 8, you can maybe kill some wall breakers. But at Town Hall 9, when you upgrade them to level 6, the max level, they do 42 damage, which coincidentally, level 5 wall breakers have 42 hit points.
Right.
So one bomb explosion will kill wall breakers. And you don't want to put them right next to the wall,
Yeah,
as Jake said, because if you put them right there, the skeleton will come in, he'll trigger it, but he'll blow up the wall before that bomb triggers. So if you put them one square out, wall breaker will come in here, trigger the bomb, and then before he has time to get to the wall and blow himself up, he'll be taken out.
Yep. Definitely. Yeah. If you hit it right next to the wall and you send in, and they send in all their wall breakers 2 or 3 at a time, you'll probably get that last one that he sent in if it's right next to the wall. But if you have it pulled out like that, you're going to get them all. He's not going to get that wall's not going to get touched. So even if he's got,
and if he loses all of his wall breakers, that's very likely a failed raid.
Oh yeah, butterfly effect in its purest form. I mean, wall breaker fail. We've seen it a million times. It can change the entire raid.
Yep.
That's pretty straightforward there. Putting it between, and putting it between these buildings where the wall breakers are likely to go. I mean, a wall breaker can't run through this building and go right here. It's got to go between buildings. So if you drop wall breakers right here, it's likely to go right there.
Yeah. And this comes back to what I've been saying a lot in this video. Always when you're base designing, think from the point of view of an attacker.
Mm-hmm.
If you were attacking this base, where would you want to come in? And therefore, where would you want to break the wall?
Great point. Yep.
Where are you going to be deploying wall breakers?
A wall breaker right there, or excuse me, a giant bomb right there, or a small bomb, does not do much for your wall breakers. That's not a logical point of entry. Try to think like Shadow was saying. Where is a logical point of entry for you? Where would you possibly come from? And put your wall breakers there. It's not going to be foolproof. You're not going to be 100%, but put it in a likely spot at least. All right, well, for the sake of time, let's touch on one more topic before we wrap this up, and anything else you want to add to it, Shadow. Usage of your high HP buildings. And in my opinion, I would include the Town Hall in that category. This is an interesting base that you did. They're really grouped there, and we'll talk about why you did that. But in general, your storages, your Town Hall, of course, your CC is high HP, but you know where you're going to put it. Those storages in your Town Hall can really play a role in your base designing. They're not just trash buildings like a collector or an army camp. They are actually something that you can use as a defender.
Yeah. So there are a few key roles that you can use these buildings in. Generally speaking, and this is a big difference between, say, Town Hall 8 and Town Hall 9, where at Town Hall 8 you use them to occupy dragons.
Right.
At Town Hall 9, all of the 3-star attacks pretty much use defensive targeting troops.
Mm-hmm.
So they're going to ignore the storages. But what won't ignore them is heroes, for example.
Yeah.
So the heroes are very often being used to come in to neutralize your own heroes. They're coming in to kill your queen. So the idea is, I'll start with these ones here. The idea of those storages is if a barbarian king comes in here, if they drop their king, if they also put down jump spell. Now, if there weren't any storages there, he'd cross the jump spell, come through here, and the queen would shoot him, he'd aggro onto her and kill her immediately.
Mm-hmm.
But by putting the storages there, he's going to be sitting here killing them before he gets into range of the queen, before he aggros onto her. She's not going to be shooting him if he's standing out here.
Mm-hmm.
And in that time, all these point defenses here are going to be shooting at him. And that's the key time. That's the key reason you're putting these HP buildings here. they're slowing down the attacker, and what that's doing is giving your defenses more time to deal damage.
Right.
Slowing down the attacker really doesn't do much unless you have buildings there to be hitting them in the meantime. Putting storage here is useless.
Right. Yeah.
So that's sort of the first key thing. You use them a lot to defend against the hybrid when it's coming in to kill your heroes. There are other ways you can play around with this. Obviously, you have to be conscious that people may be coming in from different angles of the base.
Right.
Say if they're coming in across here. But in that case, they have a lot to go through already. There's the clan castle has a lot of hit points as well. That's another key thing to realize. And then you have the town hall here. But the other big thing that I use them for in bases is, and this isn't so much of a function of their hit points, but more the fact that defensive targeting troops, which are so common, so important, the hogs, the golems, balloons, they won't target them. So you can use them as creating dead space.
Mm-hmm.
So imagine firstly, and this is by far the most common way people use them, if you see storages in a spot like this, it's quite often an indicator of where the bombs are going to be.
Mm-hmm.
Because people need buildings there in the base. If you don't have the storage there, there's a gap. People put troops right in there. So you need to have something in there. But why put a storage instead of a dark elixir drill? That's mainly just because when you put these storages inside the base, they're slowing down. If an attacker wants to come this way, say they're going to come across here with 2 jump spells. They'll come in here, then they'll jump over here, and then again over here. On the way, they're taking out this air sweeper, and that's going to neutralize the double bomb. And then they're going to get to the queen that way.
Mm-hmm.
This is just slowing them down a little bit. It's giving all of these defenses time to shoot them. If you have a lot of storages.
Well, I was just going to say one thing that I see it happen a lot that it screws people is, let's just hypothetically say you're coming in from this direction and you want to jump right here to get the queen. As the troops move in, this goes back to sort of that video I did on how to deal with the dragon in the CC. But let's say you've got a dragon in the CC. The queen sits back here. If she shoots this, it goes down. Maybe you've got a wizard that steps up, takes this out. All of this trash is gone. Now the queen's got to stop. She's going to start shooting the storage. The golems, your other troops, they're going to move in. They're going to keep going forward. That dragon's going to come out. It's going to start waylaying, maybe a balloon in there, going to start waylaying on your golems and your tanks. Queen's going to step up. She's going to take her time. She's going to target onto this storage. She's going to take her time taking it out. All the while, your tanks are out front taking all of that damage. So to use it as sort of a time sink for your wizards, your kill squad, your golems get out ahead. The kill squad hangs back is a very effective tool, in my opinion.
Yes, that's very true. And then another thing is also, if you're coming in from an angle with the golems, look at, say, this side of the base. You come in here with, say, 2 golems like this. The other thing of having this dead space zone with these storages is, if you look, there's nothing in between here to pull the golems that way, especially also if someone's come across the base like that. The golems from the near side angle, if they're coming this way, they're being pulled across this way.
Right.
Or if they're coming from across the base, then they're sort of going off this way, and it creates this dead zone around the queen, where it's difficult to get golems into tank for your own heroes when you're attacking. Those golems are ideally going to be distracting the queen while your heroes come in to take her out. But if you can push the golems off this way, if the offensive heroes are busy shooting a storage there, you have the queen. She's going to come in and start doing some damage. Maybe the arch tower shooting them here. If they've lost their tanking, because the tanks have all shifted up this way, gone over a jump spell, or say if there's a jump spell here, they may go off that way. So at that point, maybe hero ability gets wasted. They face the queen earlier than they want, and before they've taken your queen out, they don't have their ability. both queens come together, neither with an ability, and who knows which one comes out.
Excellent point. Excellent point. Again, it goes back to that butterfly effect. Even an early queen, king, or queen phasing could change the outcome of the whole thing. So it's just little things that you can do to mess with the attacker to force him to do things that he doesn't want to do.
So, I mean, when you're thinking about pathing in general, think about this is for any defense targeting troop, be it golems, loons, hogs, all of them. Think about the pathing. Think about the likely way people are going to attack the base and where they're going to be coming in. And to control that pathing, just as important as where you put defenses is where you don't put defenses.
Yep.
The dead zones in the base, where there's no defense, where one of these troops is going to be pulled towards, that's just as important as where you are putting them.
Very good point. Very good point. All right, man. I think we've done a good job of wasting probably a little over an hour of people's lives. Hopefully, they got a little bit of use out of it. Is there anything else that maybe?
Yeah, I think that's really everything I have to say. Thankfully.
Okay. Well, good. Hey, man, I do appreciate it. I want you to know that I know this is a lot of information. There's a lot of people that don't care for this stuff, but some guys will have their notepad out. They'll be talking about this. They'll be doing it, and it will help them build better bases, which just helps attackers get better. It helps defenders get better. It helps the war community in general. So I do appreciate you sharing your knowledge on this stuff, and I know the viewers do as well.
I'm just happy to have had a chance to come back, to be honest.
I'm glad to have.
Been good talking.
You bet, man. All right, guys. I hope you guys enjoyed it. I hope it helps you develop strong bases, helps you win wars, all of that good stuff. Until next time, Jake from One Hive and Shadow, formerly from One Hive, doing our best to help you guys suck less.